had to decide at that moment, was I going to do this time or was I going to let this time do me?
Didn't stop her. She's Dr. Antoinette Glenn, and that's because she has a doctorate in education, and she's been in the education field for the last 20 years now, giving back to the community. She works serving high-risk, economically disadvantaged children in the public school system, and her ultimate goal is to leave the world a better place than she found it.
And I'm like, no, why would I plead guilty for something that I didn't do? I would not do it. I'm going to trial. Made a deal with the exception of myself, my ex-husband, and another co-defendant. So the other co-defendant ended up getting 120 months with his 10 years. I end up getting 97 months with his 8 years and 1 month. And my ex-husband ended up getting 30 years.
All right, welcome back, Nightmare Success In and Out listeners. This is where you come for what happens when your worst fear becomes your reality. How do you adapt, survive, overcome, set yourself free? Hey, folks, don't forget to follow the show. Hit that follow, subscribe button. Share it out if you like it. It helps the show. Like, comment, do all those things. It's really great. I have been so excited to get to this interview because Antoinette Glenn is somebody I talked to. I want to give a shout out to my buddy Charlie Grady, who connected me to Antoinette, because Charlie was on the show, episode 118. And Charlie's got a very interesting career. He's FBI agent. He's a movie star actor. He's the founder of Hang Time and Hall of Change. And by the way, this is a Hall of Change recipient that I have on the show here today. So I'm very excited about that because I'm a big fan of this Hall of Change that they're doing in Connecticut. And they're looking to make that a national program. And I think Charlie can do that because he does those kind of things. Tell you a little bit about Antoinette. We just said here before we got on, she's 25 years that she's been out, and she has done an awful lot since she was been out. I thought it was interesting that when she was a little kid, she wanted to be a pediatrician, and life decisions took her down a totally different path. And she ended up getting a 97-month sentence in federal prison. And the interesting thing is she really got into education and wanted to change things, but she was told by so many that you can't have a career in education. Can't do it. Can't. That word can't.
Yeah.
Because she was you have this ex-felon thing that you wear around your neck when you get out, and you have to learn how to live with that. But it didn't stop her. She's Dr. Antoinette Glenn. And that's because she has a doctorate in education, and she's been in the education field for the last 20 years now, giving back to the community. She works serving high-risk, economically disadvantaged children in the public school system. And her ultimate goal is to leave the world a better place than she found it. And if you just listen to her, Antoinette's one of those people you just get kind of inspired talking to her because she's so up. She's got that whatever that it thing is that makes you feel good when you talk to her. I can't wait to unpack all this with Antoinette, but I want to recognize our show sponsor, Auto Plaza Direct. You know, who likes spending a couple of weekends walking car lots looking for a car? Then he spent 4 or 5 hours in the dealership to buy a car. It's kind of like a root canal appointment. Well, there's a better way to take away all that pain and hassle getting a car. It's called Auto Plaza Direct. They're your personal car concierge. Just tell them the car you want, what you can pay, and they'll go find that car for you. They'll negotiate your best price. They'll also offer you warranties and financing. It's all full service. Go to autoplazadirect.com to get started with your personal car concierge. The new hassle-free way, the car buying experience you deserve. Auto Plaza Direct. Tell them Brent from Nightmare Success sent you. Welcome in, Antoinette Glenn. How are you?
I'm great. How are you?
I'm doing great. I am doing great. I'm so glad we were able to connect up. And again, shout out to Charlie Grady for doing that for us. So Antoinette, I love a great comeback story like this. And, you know, and I love it when a couple of things. One is when somebody takes all their experiences and says, first of all, that's not going to keep me down. I'm going to use it. I'm going to help people with it. And you were told no, you were told can't, and it didn't stop you. It motivated you. But I'm curious, growing up as a kid, did you, because, thinking that you wanted to be a doctor, a pediatrician, what was life like for you growing up as a kid?
I single parent household. My dad was there probably until the age of 5. My parents divorced at 5. And I lived in an abusive household. My dad
Mm.
was abusive to my mom. So I went to parochial schools from 4th to 12th, but um from the beginning to 3rd, I was in the neighborhood school. So my mom sacrificed to make sure that my brother and I can go to a parochial where there was less distractions. So my goal was always to be a pediatrician. I love science. So when I graduated high school, I went off to Virginia State University, which is in Petersburg, Virginia. And it was rough, but my mom always made a way to make sure that we had everything that we needed. So I really appreciated her for that because she didn't
Sounds
go
like
back.
she was a big impact in your life.
A major impact. And she didn't have a college degree until my brother and I were in elementary school. She went back to school, got her bachelor's, and then got her master's in drug and alcohol counseling. But that was motivation enough because here it is, the single woman raising 2 kids by herself, and she went back to school so that she can get a better job to take care of us.
Mm, like a
Yeah,
role model.
yeah, definitely a
Yeah.
definitely a great role model. Definitely a great role model.
So you went to college. What was your next step after that? What happened with?
I was a pre-med major, so my next step was I was going to go to med school, and then I decided once I got out of college that let me take a break. I don't know if I want to go to school for another 8 years because you go to med school for 4 years, then you got to do your specialty. And then I met my ex-husband, and I met him, and I was like, he's a nice guy. I hang out with him for the summer or whatever, and then I go back to Maryland because my intentions were to move to Maryland. But I'm just gonna go to Connecticut and hang out for the summer. I went to Connecticut, hooked up with him, and never left.
Mm,
So getting involved with him, he was a drug dealer. And initially I didn't know, but as I found out, I was already deep into it. I was in love. So a year went by, we got married, and then that was 2000. I graduated college in 2001. I was married and had my son by not 2001, 1991. And
yep.
then 1992, I got married, had my son at the end of that year, and then 1993 is when the feds, DEA, um, and everybody knocked down the door in July 13th of that year.
Wow. Well,
Yeah.
I want to go back a little bit because I understand falling in love.
Yeah.
I've been married for 34 years, but
Oh,
at
congratulations.
the yeah, so I get that. It sounds like you dedicated yourself so much into your education. Was that hard for you to take a detour at that time in your life, get married? Did you think you were going back to it, or did you fall into that world that is? I've had so many people on this show.
Mhm.
When that all happened, did you just fall into it and thought, I'll get back to whatever I was going to do with all my other stuff? Or did you just think, this is what I'm doing, this is the guy I'm married, and this is what we're going to do from here on out?
I totally got lost in it. At one point, I said, okay, well, maybe I'm not going to go back to med school. Maybe I do nursing instead. So then I looked into going into nursing. But then I became so he was very abusive, very possessive. So there wasn't a whole lot that I can do. And by then I had my son too. So I
Right.
mean, so that was the whole thing, to take care of my son, the house, and then he was doing his thing.
So when this raid happens, And I think it's probably everybody's worst nightmare that somebody raids your house.
Hmm.
Um, what did you think something was coming down, or was it a complete surprise and the whole world changes on that moment?
I didn't know. I didn't know that anything was coming down. But I'm gonna tell you, at 5 o'clock in the morning, I had just put my son back down. I had got up, I fed him, just put my son back down, and then on my way back to my bedroom, I heard the door slamming. So then he woke up and he was like, "Look out the window and see if somebody's messing with the car." So as I'm looking out the window, they're running up the stairs. And then here's guns on me, on him. And then my son is in the room screaming and crying, and I
How
couldn't
old
get.
is he, Antoinette? How old's your son at this
He's
moment?
32.
No,
He's
at that time,
At that time, he was a year.
a year old.
He was a year. He was, yeah, he was a year.
So they raid this house, and it's a total surprise at 5 o'clock in the morning. What's going through your mind?
Oh my God. And he wasn't a year because they came. Andrew was born in 92 December. The raid happened in July of the next year. So he was like, what, 7 months?
Yeah.
Oh, I was scared to death. And never in a million years that I thought that what he was doing would have affected me.
Hmm.
But it did. Because when you're dealing with the RICO law, is knowledge of.
Everybody gets wrapped up, and then you have to
Everybody
pull the.
gets.
That's something I don't know that everybody's aware of is that the way that RICO works and conspiracy works is that you can get wrapped up in that, but then if you're part of the conspiracy, you have to prove the whole conspiracy, not just your part. And that becomes a much bigger equation than most people can handle because you're dealing with, the government and yourself and the weight of the world. So do you guys get immediately? I mean, do you just are you arrested? You're taken down to
So we're arrested on the spot. And I had to call my mother to come pick my son up. So the head agent in charge, William Reiner, I'll never forget that name. He was like, "Your mother name is such and such, right? Her number is two," because they had our phone wiretap for the past
Mm.
year. Who knew? So I dialed my mom. I told her to come up, that the feds was here, ATF, and I'm telling her, and she was like, "Why? What happened?" And I can't really explain. I just need you to come pick up Andrew. So then by the time she gets there, I'm already gone.
Mm.
And then of course she asked them for a warrant. They didn't show her one. They didn't show us one either. They just whisked us away down to Waterbury Police Department.
Wow. What happens next?
So what happens next is, at that point, um, I'm shipped off to Westchester County in Valhalla, New York, where I stayed until they moved me. And I don't know where he went. No, as a matter of fact, I didn't go there. I'm jumping ahead. They shipped me to Niantic, which is a women's facility in Connecticut. I don't know where he went. But all I know is when I went to Niantic, it was like overcrowded. So I'm in this facility over the weekend. It's overcrowded. We're sleeping on the floor and mattresses in the cafeteria. And during the day, we're in the same area. And then you have to shower in front of people and all of that. So I didn't shower all weekend and I could care less. Do you understand? My heart is racing. I'm calling my mom. I'm checking on my son. And it felt like I was in a nightmare, the
Right.
worst nightmare possible. And all I want to do is wake up and it be over. So then we go into court, and we go into court that Monday. And when we went into court that Monday, I got out. He did not. He's of Jamaican descent, and they figure risk of flight, so they didn't let him out at all.
Mm.
I came out, and when I came out, I literally moved back in with my mother. So I moved back in with my mother, and I started working, and I was working, and trial didn't begin. This is 93. Trial did not begin until 1995. So
Wow.
imagine I have gone on with my life. Now I'm working. My son and I are at my mom's house, and I'm feeling a little better. But at the same time, I have court over my head. But never in a million years do I think when I walk into court, they're going to say I'm guilty. I'm married
Mhm.
to this man that sold drugs. I wasn't a drug dealer, but none of that mattered. So we went to court in 1995.
What kind of attorney did you have at this time where you're
I had
dealing with this crazy situation?
I had pro bono. I didn't have any money to pay for an attorney, so I have a pro bono attorney. So they're going to do the minimum, but I had representation, right? And
Mhm.
I used to have to meet with him and talk to him and whatever. His thing was, why don't you plead out? You're facing over 20 years because based on the point system, I was facing over 20 years. Your son is young. Um, they offer something much lower so you can raise your son. And I'm like, no, why would I plead guilty for something that I didn't do? I would not do it. I'm going to trial.
Mhm.
So that morning when we actually got arrested, there was close to 30 people across the city of Waterbury that got arrested because my husband, and it ran for weeks, Jamaican kingpin and his wife and all that ran for weeks and weeks and weeks, right? So everybody pled out, made a deal with the exception of myself, my ex-husband, and another co-defendant. So the other co-defendant ended up getting 120 months with his 10 years. I end up getting 97 months with his 8 years and 1 month, and my ex-husband end up getting 30 years.
Wait, so, well, I want to make sure I understand. You went to trial, Antoinette?
I went to trial.
Wow. Okay.
I went to trial.
I don't think I understood that when we were talking on the phone. I didn't
Yes,
realize it. So that's
I went to trial. I went to trial. And not only did I get trial lasted for about 2 weeks. They had a lot of professional expert witnesses or whatever. My ex-husband sold to an undercover 11 times, right? So they had him there, right?
Mhm.
So when they came that morning to arrest us, he had drugs in the house. And he had drugs in the house because the undercover ordered a certain amount. He wanted to get it early that morning. So my husband, rather than taking it to his stash house across town, he brought it home. So, and he knew that, I guess, if I'm gonna come and meet you at 6 o'clock in the morning, you're not gonna go across town. You're gonna have it close by so I can just get up or whatever. And that's what he did. So he
So
had drugs in the house.
did you think, Antoinette, when you were going through this in
Mhm.
the trial, did you believe that being with a jury in a courtroom, but you've never done this, did you think that that they were going to understand? Like, what was your feeling as this trial went on for 2 weeks? Because very rarely do I have somebody on who actually went to trial.
I went to trial. I went to trial. And my heart was pounding every day. But I can be honest with you, the night before um the charges came, I didn't sleep all that night. I was up and I stared at my son and I was like, what if they take me away from you? I mean, you're my whole world and I'm your
Mm.
whole world. So then I cried through the night. And then that next day, they found everybody guilty, all guilty, whisked away. And what happened, I had family in the courtroom that had left because it's 4 o'clock, after 4 o'clock. So figuring, oh, once again, they're not going to come back with anything. The jury's not going to come back. So I'm just going to leave or whatever. I'll see you later. Later never came. They took me away, and that's when they took me to Westchester County, Valhalla.
Wow. Um, so when the jury comes back and they give the verdict, how long was it until you? I mean, I've obviously sounds like you were immediately remanded. to custody,
right?
how long did you have to wait to find out what your sentence was?
A year, over a year. Once they have you, they have you.
Right.
They just take their time with the sentencing. So, and how it goes, you're now allowed into the Bureau of Prisons to after your sentence.
Right.
So I spent most of my time in Westchester County facility, and I was there, and they moved me from Westchester County to Rhode Island, Cranston, Rhode Island adult facility. And while I was there is when they brought me out to sentence me. So I was brought out and I was sentenced to 97 months.
What
And
did you think? What did you think, Antoinette? I can't imagine.
my heart dropped. My heart dropped. My mom was in the courtroom. My heart dropped. My heart dropped, but another part of me felt relieved
Mm,
that I felt free because I was no longer going to be with him,
mm,
because I had left several times and I kept going back. So I knew at this point that there was no way I was going back because I was going to prison. And when we were asked if we had anything that we wanted to say, so I stood up and I told them that for the first time in a very long time, I felt free. I said, I know it may sound ironic to you, but I was in a very volatile relationship. So even though I'm going to prison, that's just a physical prison. I was already in prison.
mhm.
And I said, once I get out of prison, one of the things I'm going to do is I'm going to write a book. And I said, I'm going to write a book and I'm going to tell my story in hopes that I can help every other woman that are in this situation that I'm in right now.
Wow.
By the time I finished, the whole courtroom was crying. That was it. And then,
And you did write a book. It's called Found Guilty: My 26-Year Journey to Redemption. So
yes,
you didn't just say that day. You actually wrote a book
did it.
that's out on Amazon. I want to take a break here because when we get back, I want to go into what it was like for you after you were in a year in the county jail, which is the worst place to be. How you entered the world knowing that you were going to be that was going to be your home for a long time, not just a few weeks or a few months or a few years. Um, but let's recognize how do you, a lot of people don't like how they look and show up online. Many individuals think that there's no hope when it comes to managing their reputation on Google. Well, there's hope. It's called the Discoverability Company, and they can help you. Whether you're building a reputation from scratch, repairing your search results after a negative news story, or even if you're just trying to position yourself a little better against businesses you're in competition with. Discoverability can also help you how you're portrayed on popular AI services like ChatGPT. To learn more, visit discoverability.co. They're even launching a do-it-yourself SEO option, a course for individuals who want to take their search results on their own budget and speed. Listeners of Nightmare Success can take $100 off the DIY SEO course with a coupon code Nightmare Success. I also want to recognize that Nightmare Success podcast is sponsored by the White Collar Support Group. It's the world's first support group devoted to people navigating the white collar criminal justice system. I'm a member of the White Collar Support Group, and I can tell you this is a bunch of people who help each other through the criminal justice journey for free. Whether you're just starting your journey or you've made it through to the other side, this is a great space for you. You can join us on Zoom Monday, 7 p.m. Eastern. For information, go to prisonist.org. That's prisonist.org. Start here. So, Antoinette, you get this devastating sentence. And for those who might or might not know, a lot of times in the federal system, when you go to trial, you get a trial penalty because you've gone to trial, and that sentence ends up being longer than it would have been if you would have pled out. And that's just the way the system works. It shouldn't work like that, but it does.
it does.
But you walk into this prison. What mindset are you in walking into that, knowing you're going to be there for a while?
When I first go into Westchester County, I was I was afraid. I'm going into a county jail and all types of people in county jails. You have people that are um do the revolving door type of thing. I had a couple of girls that came in and out a couple of times out while I was there because they were addicts.
Yeah.
So I had never been around an addict. So that was new for me. So I can see the detoxing, the bones hurting and everything, and them standing in the med line and getting whatever they need to get because some had HIV and then others detoxing. So they got to get that medicine that they give you to help you detox, which is no better than the drug itself. I was in shock still. I
Hmm.
was still in shock. Still in shock. Could not believe that it was happening. It felt like a movie.
Yeah. Yeah. Out about our experience. When you finally get to the federal prison, um, which is different. I mean, it's
Yeah.
the county and the
Yeah.
prison jail is different than prison. Um, what was your first entry like going in, being in the federal prison? Were you federal prison camp?
Yes.
Yeah.
I was in the camp the whole time. So
Yeah.
no minimum security, no gates. You can just walk right out if you wanted to. But who's going to do that?
Right. Exactly.
Who's going to do that? So I mean, you look, you see the gate, and you can just walk out, but you're not definitely not going to do that. So I was heartbroken because there's a federal facility maybe 30, 35, 40 minutes from my hometown, Danbury Federal
Hmm.
Correctional Facility. They didn't send me there. They flew me across the world to West Virginia.
Oh,
And even in transit was definitely like a movie because it was like a flight of just convicted felons and marshals
mhm.
and retired military with rifles and all of that. So you're getting off your van to get onto the plane, and then they have the women lined up on one side, the men lined up on the other, and of course they're more dangerous than we are, so they're going to put them on the plane first. So the whole plane, and I'm sure it had to have been, of course, you don't know where you are. I'm thinking the military base because it's not going to be a regular airport where they're going to have this going on. Well, anyway, so you're standing there, you're waiting to get on, you shackled, so you can't even really walk. I mean, you really can. It's on your feet, on your hand, and you got the chains down. I felt it was so degrading.
Yeah, it's very dehumanizing.
Ah, it was so degrading. Oh my gosh, it was so degrading. I think that was one of the worst phases of my time of being in prison, how low I felt at that
Oh,
moment.
Antoinette, I had a situation where I had been in prison for a year and a half. I was at Leavenworth, and I had to go back to be a witness in the federal civil trial. And the guys had told me, "Oh, it won't be bad. You know, there'll be marshals, and it'll be easy." And like you said, you never know because they never tell you when you're leaving, where you're going, how far you're going, when all that. But the thing that most surprised me was I voluntarily surrendered in 2014. I've never been, handcuffed or anything. And the first thing that happens is I get picked up by these sheriffs to take me to this Warren County jail, and I'm immediately shackled. And I'm riding in this van shackled and thinking, like you're saying, it's the most dehumanizing feeling of having these chains at your waist, chains around your ankles. And then when I got to the trial, um, I was able to wear a suit, but my ankles were shackled. So I walked into this courtroom with my ankles shackled, and this just gigantic courtroom totally filled with people. And I was thinking, wow, what an unbelievable feeling experience this is to have, even in the courtroom where you're supposed to feel like that you're normalized, and walking in with shackles on your ankles was just a feeling that you never can quite explain unless you've actually worn those shackles.
Right? You can't.
No.
No
Well, you
words.
finally, Antoinette, you finally get to where you're going after this horrendous ride on Con Air and everywhere else.
Right.
Um, what's that entrance like for you once you finally get to the place you're supposed to be?
Well, it was totally different, of course, than the county jails or the holding facilities. When I got on the compound, um, I had to do the check-in or whatever. I had to go get my uniforms or whatever because everybody has to look alike.
Yeah.
Even though when I got there, people had their street clothes on, right? The Zimmerman bill, they had their street clothes still on, leather coats, sneakers, jeans, or whatever, and everyone coming in at that point had to wear the uniforms, but they was phasing out the people on the compound that had their clothes. They had to box them and ship them out because at this point they're getting away with it and everybody's gonna be in khaki. So that's what ended up happening. And when I actually walked into the cottage, um, I'm gonna be quite frank with you. It felt like I was walking into my freshman dorm on campus
Mhm.
because the rooms were set up like a bunk,
Mhm.
um, two closets, a desk. So it felt like a college campus setting inside of the room. And we had keys to our door. I said, who gives you keys to the door? You know,
That's that's
all of
something.
that was strange. All of that was strange to me. And it was definitely totally different from where I came from. But all that was short lived, of course, because the fact still remained that I was in prison.
Right.
So I had to decide at that moment, was I going to do this time or was I going to let this time do me?
Mm.
Right? I'm already away from this abusive man. I'm away from my son. My heart is broken, but now it's my time to get me together, to
Right.
build me up and to find out why you even got yourself in that situation in the first place. So I
Mhm.
had to dig deep. And that's what I did when I was away. I focused on me. I almost had to block outside out. And it was easy to do being over in West Virginia. It's
Yeah,
not
how
like
many hours away would you have been from your mom and your son?
I didn't see my son for over a year once
Over
I
a
went.
year.
That first year I was there, I didn't see anybody. I had no visits. Oh, it was horrible.
Mm.
And then after that, I a sorority sister came to visit me. And then my mom and my aunt came to visit me and brought my son to see me. I must have saw her maybe twice while I was out there. And that was difficult. But in the meantime, I was learning me again, and building me up so I can be a better person, a better mother. And I had to put a plan in place of what I was going to do once I got out. Because the reality is what it was is that I'm in here.
Mhm.
So what are you going to do while you're in here? Because you're not going to be in here forever.
Right.
So I went to the library because I was sentenced to 97 months. And as I read my paperwork, they charged me with everything they charged him with. And I was like, there's no way. So I go into the library, I'm doing research, I find some other cases. So I immediately wrote my attorney and I was like, I want to go back for an appeal. He was like, why? You were facing 20, you ended up with 8. Why would you want to? I said, because I'm being charged for every transaction of drugs that he did, and that's unfair. So he didn't want to do it initially. So I wrote the courts, and I was like, I'm gonna file a
Pro
twenty
se.
yeah, a 2255 ineffective counsel. I need you to appoint me another counselor so I can go back into the court and file an appeal. They
Mhm.
said, well, he's not going to be dismissed from being your attorney. If you want to go back on an appeal, then he's going to take you back on an appeal. So I did my research. I told him what I want to go back on an appeal with. Of course, I won. So that was my first.
That had to feel
first
good.
yeah, it felt good. And that was the first time that I realized that I'm never going to accept no for an answer.
Mhm.
Because had I not followed my own sense of who I was, yes, I married this man. And at the same time, I shouldn't be punished for the amount of time that they want to punish me.
Mm-hmm.
If you found me guilty, you found me guilty of whatever, but let me do this amount of time. I'm not doing all of that time. I have a son out here.
Mm-hmm.
So I went back on appeal and I was resentenced to 6 years and 6 months instead of the 8 years and 1 month. And then I did 5 years and 3 months off of that sentence because, you know, in the federal system, there's no probation.
Right.
So you get 54 days off a year. So I end up doing 5 years, 3 months, 2 weeks, 8 hours and 4 minutes in federal.
And you said that what you did while you were in there. I mean, I love that part of the story, though, that you, at that moment, you decided, I'm not going to accept no, because that's really your story. Your comeback story is
It
that
is.
you did the impossible, what people said you couldn't do. When you were in there for that amount of time, what were you thinking as you were getting close to getting out and you were getting these wins that you were going to serve less time? What were your thoughts and what were your plans on when you got out?
I At that time I hadn't even written anything down. But before I came home and I knew I needed to forgive my ex-husband. Not for him, but for me.
Mm-hmm.
Because I spent so much of my time and energy hating this man
Mm-hmm.
for not sticking up for me, for not taking the deal that he could have took a deal and I wouldn't have did one day.
Wow.
And my attorney told me that. So the fact that you didn't do that, I held that over him for all those years, and it ate away like it ate
Yeah.
away
Start
that
eating you up. Yep.
it did. So I had to release that and forgive him, not for him, but for me, so that I could move on.
Mm-hmm.
And that's what I was able to do. So at that point, I had to, and I tell people this, and I don't know, it didn't matter if they believe me or not. I knew that when I got out, that I had to do something that was going to reach a whole magnitude of people, that was going to help them in the same situation, that was going to help all the broken women, all the broken kids, because that's what I was,
Mm-hmm.
right? So now I found a purpose. Doing all of this, I found my purpose in prison. So I'm laying in bed one night and I felt a presence. And then I felt like, you know how you feel somebody sit at the foot of your bed? That's what I felt.
Mm.
But I wasn't scared of anything. I looked and there was nobody there. But I felt a sense of love. And it was my grandmother. And what she said to me was that she was proud of me. And she said, you know, although you're going through this, your journey's not over. And your story is going to impact so many people. I'm proud of you. Remember that. And I think that next day I found out that my grandmother had passed away.
Mm.
So that very next day, they told me she passed away. I was like, well, that explains why she stopped by to see me. So at that point, I was like, well, what can I do to actually reach women like myself, reach children like myself,
Mm-hmm.
but go into the school system? I never wanted to go into the school system. I mean, I love kids. I wanted to be a pediatrician. I never wanted to go into the school system. So when I came home, you know, and I stayed in Connecticut for about a year. And then I moved to Maryland with one of my sorority sisters, and she worked for the school system. So she went down to the Board of Ed and she was doing her paperwork and stuff. And while we were waiting in the hallway, one of the HR people walked by us and said, do you all have your assignments for the school year? She was like, well, I'm just here dropping off paperwork, but you know, and then we explained to her about my situation.
Mm-hmm.
So she was like, you a biology major? You can still teach. I'm like, I was told that I couldn't teach. She said, you definitely can still teach. So then she took me to the head person in charge. I explained my story again. So I filled out an application. So of course on my application, I had to fill out what happened. I went to trial and my charges what they were. I had to get fingerprinted, and I got fingerprinted, and no charges came back.
Wow. Wow. Well, the other thing I think's really powerful about that little bit of a story you just told is that you went in and you told your story. I think it's so important that people, when they get out and they go through the horrific part of reentry, is that they can tell their story. Because whether you're going for a job or you're just at a social function or whatever it is, you've got to be able to tell your story, because if you don't, then they own it. And if you tell your story, you own it. And you didn't, who was it that told you couldn't be a teacher?
The federal probation, I can't say officer, she was supervising releasing me.
Okay.
And when we got out, and she was like, Antoinette, I really think you'll be a positive to these group of girls. So she took myself and another lady that had been in prison, and we were both under her.
Mhm.
We went to speak to these group of girls. I guess they had already started getting in trouble, right? So we went in, they were sitting there, they didn't want to be there talking, whatever. I told my story. She told her story. The whole attitude in the room totally changed. They were crying, this, that, and the other. And my thing was, you don't want to end up where I just came from. You're still young. You need to make better choices. So at that point is when I told her, I said, you know what? I really want to go into education for the same reason. She was like, well, Antoinette, you can never go into education. You're a third-party risk. I said, oh, okay. I said, but in the back of my mind, that was a no again. And I wasn't dealing with no's. Remember I told you, Brent, I wasn't.
You knock nose to the side.
No. The fact that you told me I can't do it, I'm getting ready to show you that I can. I did.
That's your motivation.
Right. So what I had to get from her was I had to get permission to relocate to Maryland, because I told her while I'm here, I said, it's like a black cloud hanging over my head. I don't feel that I can get to where I want to be if I'm still here, because our fingers are going to be pointing or whatever. I need to go off and start over new somewhere. And she agreed. So because I was a low risk for her, you know, I had never been into trouble, never did drugs. I reported when I had to. Drug tests came back clean all the time, of course, because I don't do drugs. She was like, well, I'm going to let you go, move to Maryland. She said, when you get there, get a job. Once you get a job, I'm going to transfer you down there. But I can't transfer you down there before you get a job. She said, but meanwhile, call me, check in with me, and we'll do that until you get a job and I transfer you down there. So I got a job as soon as I got down there, because I was one of the head cooks in both facilities. So it was easy to get a job at a restaurant. So that's what I did. I went to TGI Fridays when I got out of prison. So when I moved to Maryland, I had that TGI Fridays manager call the one in Maryland. So I had a job when I got there. And I worked there until I got a job at the school system.
So getting a job at the school system, and while you were doing that, when did your education part come in with getting your doctorate and all that?
Okay, so I started working for the school system in 2001, right? So I'm actually been working with the school system now for 24 years. And in 2007, I went back and got my master's at Coppin State University, because my district had a partnership with Coppin. So we got reduced prices with our courses. And so I got my master's in 2 years. So in 2009, I graduated from Coppin State with my master's in education, adult education and supervision. That's when I got my admin one, and I was qualified for being an assistant principal. So in 2019 is when I got a job as a principal. But in 2015, I was researching. I knew I was going back to college to get my doctorate. I wanted to be a doctor to begin with.
There you go. Right.
Right. So because I am now ex-felon, I don't think they're going to let me be a medical doctor, but I am going to get my doctorate. And I got my doctorate in executive K-12 administration. And I just researched the different colleges and the different programs. I needed something that was going to allow me to, I can do hybrid. I didn't want to do online. I
Mhm.
wanted to be able to go on campus.
Mhm.
So I went to the College of William and Mary in 2015, and I went to class once a month, 1 week in a month, and then 2 weeks over the summer. It was an accelerated program that you can get your doctorate in 3 to 4 years. I got mine in 4 years.
It's
4 years
impressive.
exactly. So in 2015, I started. In 2019, I walked and I became Dr. Antoinette Glenn.
It's impressive. So what all do you do?
What all do I do now?
Yeah, because there's a whole host of things when you read about all the different things you've been involved in with
Oh my
kids.
gosh, yes. I was inducted into the Connecticut Hall and Chains back in 2021,
Mhm.
and I graduated in 2019. I got a call from somebody that was on a board, hang time or something, and
It's hanging time.
yes, and asked me if I would be interested in being nominated to be a part of the Connecticut Hall of Change, right?
Mhm.
He explained to me what it was and would I be interested? And I was like, sure. I was like, wow, they giving recognition for people that have been to prison, coming home, doing positive things in the community. Who knew?
Yeah.
So of course I would want to be nominated. So I was nominated. I went, I spoke, and it was very powerful. It was very powerful to hear the different stories of everybody that was inducted. And my class was the second class that was inducted. One the year before, it was COVID, so they did everything online, or they did everything in a small setting, whereas we had a big to do or whatever, and it has since spread to mega gowns and everything. It's really a major deal.
Oh no,
It's
I love it. Charlie sent me the video of the most recent one, and you know what I love about the Hall of Change is that it's giving people recognition for doing the hard work of getting out and making a change, you know, and making a positive change in the community. And, you know, it's, you know, when I was talking to Charlie about you, it's so inspiring because one of the things I love is that this show, you know, is heard around the world, but it also goes into over 1,000 prisons. And I think, you know, stories like yours, Antoinette, is that thing of being told you can't, being
right.
told no. And the thing about it is that each time you were told that, it inspired you, motivated you to figure out a solution to overcoming that. And I think the other thing that's so powerful is you were talking about when you were in that room and you were talking to those young women, and they could feel what you were saying because you had walked the walk and not just talking the talk.
Right.
You had been and lived that experience, and giving back has got to make you feel, I don't, it's got to make you feel really good.
It really makes me feel good, and I think another thing that we did, as being a a grade aider, as we're called,
Great
was
aiders.
going into the prisons and speaking to those correctional officers that are just coming in, haven't even stepped foot into the door yet. It gave them a sense of humanizing us.
Absolutely. Not just a number, you're a person.
Right. So we had an opportunity to talk to them before they even did their first hour or first, So we would go in and we'll stand up and we'll tell our stories, and everybody is just amazed at the fact that we've been through what we went through, and our mistake is not where our story ended.
Right.
Bottom line, you know, and we got standing ovations
Well,
before
it's
they
powerful too because, you know,
even to hear us.
yeah, and Charlie talks about why, you know, not just to have and reward these people for their great efforts, but then going back in and talking to the cadets, talking to COs, um, to bring them to a place where hopefully they look at their job, the people that they're around differently, knowing that these people that just spoke today have been there. They've
Right.
been to prison, and this is what they're doing now. So don't kick them to the curb while you're there working. Look at them as possibilities of what they can be when they get out. And I think that's such a powerful thing. And it's one of those things I hope that the Hall of Change can be something that's in every state, because I think it has that kind of power to it.
That's my goal, and that's Charlie's goal as well. As you know, he retired. I said I'm close to it, and even though I'm not, when you want to get on the road and promote this from state to state, I'm there
Yeah.
because I truly believe in it. I really believe in it's a brotherhood, a sisterhood of being at our lowest in life and
Right.
still getting to where we are today. So I'm very thankful for the Hall of Change. And
I,
that's how I got involved with the reentry. Because I wasn't involved with reentry upon getting out. Because how do you get involved with reentry and you're an ex-felon?
right.
You know, so once I became involved in this, it was like, okay, there's so much more that I want to do, that I can do. And because I'm in the school system, there's really a conflict of interest of me really doing a lot more that I want to do within the building. So I really got to kind of wait and do things outside the building. But I still travel and I still tell my story and I
Mhm.
still support when we have events in Connecticut. I'm up in Connecticut more now than I was before. You know, a couple of times a year, I'm up there, I'm speaking, I'm supporting the event. So
Well,
definitely.
and you said your son's 32 years old now. He's got to be, I would think, mom's pretty much, she's got it going.
That
She went through it all. I mean, to think that you went through hell, a nightmare, and came out on the other side, got recognized as a grade eighter that was Hall of Change in the state, and got your doctorate, and helping the youth of America through
yeah.
education is just a fantastic comeback story.
Thank you so much. Yes, he wrote the preface in my book. I asked him to write it and just to come from his point of view of when he was a child
Mm,
and what he felt when I went away. And
yeah.
every time I read that page, I cry. Oh
Oh
my!
man, I bet.
He was two. He was two when I left.
Mm,
He was seven, turning 8 when I came home.
wow.
So I mean, I said, "Your book is next. Let me know when you want to write it."
Well, it's the thing about it is that kids, when somebody gets sent to prison, the whole family goes to prison. They have to deal
Right.
with it and work through it,
Hmm.
however they work through it. And when people stay together and lean on each other to get through it, I think it even makes them stronger. I'm curious, Antoinette, after all this that you went through, and now we're reflecting back on, you've gone through 24 years of really have a big impact. What do you think's your biggest takeaway through all of it?
Mm. Since I've been home, or just
Yeah,
this whole
just the whole thing.
I really had to dissect my life when I was in prison. And I looked at it from the time that I was a child and being in a home where my dad was abusive to my mom. And then I was molested by a family member by the age of 9 or 10. I can't even remember the exact age. So I grew up as a broken child who became a broken and abused adult. And then I went to prison because of choices that I made. So I have to do something with my journey that's going to help those students or those women that are broken. So that's my biggest takeaway, because men go to prison all the time. And I mean
Mhm.
that doesn't make it right. But when you look at a mother being taken away from her child in this capacity, then it's collateral damage
Mhm.
almost, you know? So as a mother, I had to come back stronger than I was before I went out.
Mm.
So that was my biggest takeaway of being a better me when I came out, and making sure that I positioned myself to receive all that I needed to receive, to get to the places that I need to get to, and to have an impact on all that I needed to impact.
Mm. I like that. Yeah, you're helping the broken through your
Yeah,
own experiences. That's
yeah,
powerful. That's
yeah.
powerful. If people want to get your book, you can go to Amazon.
Right,
Um, and the title of it is Found Guilty, My 26-Year Journey to Redemption. I'll
right.
be getting that book. I want to read that. The son's at the beginning of the book where, yeah, you got my curiosity way up, Antoinette.
Yeah,
Um,
it's a powerful page. I'm gonna tell
I
you,
can't wait
it's a
to read that.
tearjerker. It's a tearjerker.
I bet
The
it
whole
is.
book is so you're gonna go through. I wrote the book in hopes that everyone truly went on my journey with me. You're gonna
Yeah.
have your highs, your lows. You're gonna have your humor, but
Mhm.
in the end, you're gonna see the woman that I became as a result of all of it.
I love it. And that's what life is, the highs, the lows, and what you become. Well,
Definitely.
speaking of gratitude, I want to thank Homestead Financial for letting me use this podcast room here with all this fancy equipment and stuff. If you got home mortgage needs, Greg Aftiev is your guy. I got a book out there too on Amazon if you want to check it out, and
Okay.
Barnes and Noble, Nightmare Success. Um, if you've got time, leave me a review on Apple, Spotify. It helps the show. If you want to know any more about what I've got going on, go to brentcassity.com. I spell it wrong. I spell it with a TY, not a DY. And as I used to say to my people when I was writing my emails back and forth from Leavenworth, stay strong. I'll do the same. Antoinette, thank you so much for being a guest here today. I love your story.
Thank you so much for having me. It was a pleasure as always.
Nightmare Success, in and out.